Hi, I'm Scott Humphrey, CEO of the World Floor Covering Association, and this is Leadership Live. Today I want to talk to you about a four-letter word, and that four-letter word is love. It's not a word we often hear talked about in correlation with leadership, and the reason for that is it's uncomfortable. For some people, they like to keep some distance between the depth of their relationship and their leadership. To some people, it's just touchy-feely. But I would tell you, in a world like what we face today, in a nation that is so divided, where we see riots and hatred, if there's ever been a time for leaders to step up and say, we're going to go against the flow and we're going to love, well, it's now. I was thinking about this and recently going back through some articles I had written. I found an article from 2013 where I talked about a leader by the name of Jerry Sanford. Jerry was the mayor of my local town, Chatsworth, Georgia. And he happened to live back through the woods next to our house. And as he got older, he developed Alzheimer's disease, and it began to impact him and his freedom. Well, I go on to share how I enjoyed a well-manicured lawn, and one day I was out looking at the lawn and realized we had two paths in the yard. I was convinced that they were created by my four kids who had been playing, and one of them led over to the dog lot, which would be a natural place for them to go, and the other one led through our yard back into the woods. And so when I confronted the kids, they said, "Dad, it's not us, it's Mr. Jerry." I said, "Mr. Jerry?" They said, "Yeah, he comes by here sometimes 10 times a day, and he always stops at Hershey's lot, and sometimes he'll take the other trail and go out through the woods." I said, "Wow." So I began to pay attention to that. It really wasn't hard to tell when Mr. Jerry was there because Hershey would go nuts. He got so much attention from Mr. Jerry that he loved that time, and he would yelp. Occasionally I would walk over and listen to Mr. Jerry's dialogue with Hershey, and I would hear him say this: "I love you. I love you. I love you. You're a good dog. I love you." Occasionally, when I knew it wouldn't scare him, I would cautiously talk to him as well. And don't be surprised that he said to me the same thing that he said to Hershey and what he said to everyone toward the end of his life. He would look at me and go, "I love you. I love you." Mr. Jerry died later that year. But because he had the wisdom to create these paths, he was actually able to extend his freedom because both paths ultimately led him back to his safe zone, his home. I learned so much from him. I learned that it's okay to tell somebody you love them. I also learned that all routine is not bad. As a person who sees myself as a catalyst for change, I'm often about checking off the box and going on to the next thing. But some routine is good. Prayer, meditation to focus your life is good. Spending quality time with people that look up to you for leadership, with your family, that's a good routine. Investing in yourself by continuing your education, by reading a book, that is a good routine. The other thing I learned from Mr. Jerry and his leadership and his love was to prepare for someday. Before he got really bad, he had the wisdom to create not one path, but two, and that gave him more freedom. He knew that both paths would take him back to his safe zone, to his home. Wow, what an amazing man. Imagine that. If your legacy could be one thing, Mr. Jerry will be known as the person who told everybody that he loved them. I know it's not comfortable. I know it's not normal, but I would tell you again, our world needs it now. There's too much hatred out there. There's too much divisiveness. There's too much focusing on what makes us different rather than what we have in common. I want to challenge you as leaders. Go out there and love.